We're going to talk about squat depth. How deep should you squat? I've covered this in a couple longer videos, especially our full how to squat video. And there's a segment in there that actually goes over how deep you want to squat. But we'll go into a little bit more detail here and outline some more obvious examples that will hopefully help you understand how to find out how deep you should squat. So there's plenty of research actually showing that the deeper you squat, the stronger you can get and the more your quads work. Now that makes sense because we know that the bigger range of motion you take a muscle through, usually the better results you get. There is some conflicting research showing that if you really overload a smaller range of motion, you can also see some muscle and strength gains, but that's a more advanced method. Ideally, you want to max out what you can get within a full range of motion, and then as you become more advanced, you can start playing around with different ranges of motions. With the squat, the most important thing to think about is that you want to go as low as you can while still maintaining a neutral spine. So, I'll show you 3 examples. I'll show you a neutral spine, then I'll show you an anterior pelvic tilt, and I'll show you a posterior pelvic tilt and explain what the differences are. So first, this is a neutral spine squat. Next is an anterior pelvic tilted squat. You see how in order for me to get low enough, I'm really arching my lower back and my knees are really going forward. My feet are coming off the ground, and this is in order to get low. This is probably as far as I would want to go with an anterior tilt, but the point is, that's not a safe variation. It puts a lot of stress on your spine, and not that having your knees past your toes is necessarily bad, but if you have a lot of weight on you and all of a sudden your heels are getting up, that throws off all of the stability. There's a whole separate reason why the whole knees over the toes thing is not bad. We're not covering that in this video. That's irrelevant. Now the third pelvic tilt relating to a squat is the posterior tilt. And it looks like this. So in order for me to get really low in that position, you can see how rounded my lower back is. Now, that's the opposite of an anterior tilt, but it's equally as bad for your lower back. There's a lot of tension on the spine and the discs when your lower back is rounded like that. And now we call that a butt wink. So some people can squat real low and then their butt starts to wink right here. You can see that little curve, this little thing. Now, there are some people that are able to really stabilize their spine and use their abs and their lower back to hold that posterior pelvic tilt position in a somewhat safe manner while they're squatting. That's usually reserved for some Olympic weightlifters, strongmen, people that are doing that for competition, or some people just have really unique anthropometrics and body levers and they're just able to do that in a safe way without getting hurt. However, for the vast majority of people, those are really high risk of injury positions and you should be squatting in a neutral spine. So how low should you go in your squat? Well, essentially we want to go as low as we can in that neutral spine position. So if you pay attention here, I'm still neutral, I'm still neutral, I'm still neutral to about here, and I think my thighs are about parallel to the ground. So that's good. If I go any lower, I really struggle to get that neutral hip position. I start rounding or I start leaning too far forward. So imagine if I had a weight on my back or in the front squat position. This would throw me off and being too upright would throw me back. So I know that for me, it's safest to squat as low as parallel thighs with weight on my back. You might be wondering how low you can go with a neutral spine. And that answer can change, because if you naturally don't have a good range of motion, you might want to look at your form. Form really does matter. We're going to show you another example with the weight in a goblet squat position, and I'll show you that just with cueing and paying attention to the right muscles and the right movements of your body, you can unlock a deeper range of motion. So, for example, if I don't pay much attention here, I'm just going to squat like this, and I naturally lean towards having a rounded lower back. But if I really pay attention, sit the butt back, brace the abs, get a little bit of a hip hinge, and bend the knees, I can maintain that neutral spine for much lower. So spinal positioning really matters, and the way that you do a rep really, really matters. This is something that you can work on yourself, and if you find that you're not seeing gains, go out and talk to a personal trainer that really knows their stuff. Here at Clearcut Fitness, we have trainers that do in-person and online, and everyone is all about continued education, learning, progressing, and helping people get healthy and strong. So one last thing to note, if you have an injury or you had a previous injury that has kind of thrown off your mobility and your movement, it might be harder to get real low. And if that's the case, the best thing for you to do is just go as low as you can while still maintaining that neutral spine. So I don't know what injury you might have, but you might only be able to go here to a half squat, and that's totally fine before you start rounding over. If you have a medical condition or an injury that needs rehabbing, do that first before you try and squat heavy and squat low. Get clearance, make sure you're in a safe position, learn how to squat properly, and then get your ass as low as you can, ass to grass.